Welcome. Good afternoon. This is Ben Giddy Baker and Glenn Watt here in the CB Giddy shop. Shane Spiel is currently on the road on his way back to Pennsylvania driving, so I told him we'd do today's noon broadcast here on the Cigar Box Nation TV station. Today we're going to talk a little bit about mounting tuners, standard tuners on cigar box guitars, how to get them the right way around, why it's important to do so, and Glenn's going to show us a little bit about how you can take a tuner apart, identifying the different parts of it, and actually you can even show them how to switch one around so it can be used on either side. So if you want to come on in a little bit here, I have two cigar box guitars. One of them actually is the first cigar box guitar I ever built back in 2008, following the 3-string cigar box guitar plans that I got off of Cigar Box Nation. And if I flip the headstock around, you can see that the tuners are actually mounted upside down. The gear, the toothed gear part, is that what we're calling it? The toothed gear is aligned upward towards the top of the headstock, when actually it's supposed to be aligned the other way. If we take another cigar box guitar, this is a model Glenn just finished earlier today, and if we look at the back of the headstock here, you can see that the tuner gears are aligned down towards the body of the instrument. So on your right we have the incorrect one, and on your left we have the correct one. Now you may be asking, why does it matter? Clearly on this guitar they're upside down, but the strings are holding tension, a little bit out of tune, but they're doing what they're supposed to do. And a lot of times they will, perhaps even most times they will. But as Glenn will show us when we start taking one of them apart, mounting them upside down can cause the gears, you've got the worm gear that goes this way, and it'll be more clear once Glenn takes one apart. The worm gear, the toothed gear, when they're mounted this way, the string tension can actually pull them apart and cause them to slip. So do we want to switch to taking one apart, Glenn?
Sure.
All right.
So what Ben was showing you are open gear tuners. Now this also applies to enclosed tuners as well. It's just that you won't be able to see this toothed gear. I think they're also called pinion gears, but these toothed gear, you won't be able to see it in a closed gear tuner because it's encased in a housing. But what Ben was describing, and he actually has one here as well.
This is what we call sealed gear or enclosed gear tuners. The gear is in here behind this little circle. So when it's this way, the gear would be pointing down. When it's this way, the gear would be pointing up.
And ideally, I hate to be so A-B about it, so binary, but the correct way of installing it, the best way of installing it would be to have your pinion or your tooth gear below the worm gear. Now on the back of, you don't have to actually move it. If I can just grab this guitar real quick. You can see on the back of this headstock, when you install a tuner, having the pinion gear or the tooth gear below this worm gear, that would be from the back of that headstock. This is how the tuners are oriented. So this would make this a left-hand tuner because you're installing with the knob, the tuning knob, and the post are headed out to the left-hand side from the back of the headstock, and this would be a right-hand tuner, which may seem somewhat counterintuitive because you're looking at the front of the headstock from this direction, but as a rule of thumb, left-hand geared tuners are on the side from the back of the headstock. Now to disassemble.
And I just add, we didn't make that up. That's kind of like a guitar industry standard. So the manufacturers of these tuners, that's how they define them. That's how guitar builders define them. So we're sticking with that, even though it can be a little confusing to new builders.
Now, if you will, just to show you a little bit of like the anatomy of a tuner. And forgive me if I'm getting in the light. I'm not exactly. Yeah,
we're not in a studio here. This is Glenn's actual workbench.
And the coffee jitters. Yeah, those belong to me too. So if you remove the screw and get my meaty thumbs out of the way, you will see the tooth or the pinion gear will come out from underneath the worm gear. This is the worm gear. There's a washer on there. Now if you want, you could actually, on an open gear tuner, let's say you would draw or you would drill the incorrect holes, or you had drilled holes into your headstock, two right hand and two left hand, and you really, or two right hand, one hand, anyways, you drilled the wrong holes on your headstock, and you have tuners that fit the opposite ones that you need. You could actually take this worm gear and flip it around and then reinstall the pinion gear and the washer onto the back of the post, or I think some people would call it the capstan of the tuner. And you could install the pinion gear or the tooth gear back into the back of the capstan, and you could essentially, on an open gear tuner, flip the orientation of that tuner from a left hand to a right hand, or a right hand to the left hand. Now of course the mounting plate is going to be, flipped.
It'll be the reverse of an actual right-handed tuner. See how the angle goes this way versus that way. But it's not really a big deal. And honestly, a lot of people ask, like they'll buy tuners, buy a new type of tuner for the first time, and they'll want to know what are the drill sizes and what should I do to pre-drill everything before they get the tuners. I always advise, don't drill anything until you're holding the thing in your hand that you're going to be using, because sometimes being able to see it and kind of dry fit it and put it in place is a good thing to avoid making mistakes. So to kind of expand on what Glenn was saying a little bit, if I'm going to loosen this back up to try to demonstrate the point. When the tuner is mounted correctly, it's mounted right side up with the gear facing the body of the instrument. As the string gets tighter, that string tension is going to pull the post this way. Now the posts don't move this much normally. I loosen the screw up. So as the string's tension pulls the post downwards towards the body of the instrument, it's going to pull the gear teeth tighter. It's going to pull that tooth gear in tighter to the worm gear. Now if this was mounted upside down with the tooth gear facing the top of the instrument, the string tension is still going to be pulling down, and you can see, hopefully, that string tension is pulling those gear teeth apart. And that is why mounting them upside down can cause string slippage. You won't be able to get it up to pitch. It can cause these brass teeth to strip and get ground off, and can basically make a guitar untunable and unplayable. And I've had quite a few customers contact me, saying your tuners are no good, they're slipping, they're stripping. And I say, send me a picture of the back of the headstock. And at least 75% of the time, it looks like the old one that I built there with those gears pointed upwards. And once they swap them around, suddenly it stops slipping, stops stripping, and they can get their guitar tuned up.
A good shout out to Ed. He actually.
We have a question coming
well,
in.
No, he had a good point on actually what you just explained there in detail about the seesaw and how you push down, and yep. So thank you, Ed.
Yes, and that's pretty much the extent of that. Glenn actually just recently wrote and posted an article on his blog, glennwatt.com, explaining this, showing you in photos a walkthrough of both how to mount tuners correctly, why to mount them correctly, and also how to switch around the orientation if you need to. So if you want a refresher on what we've talked about today, or want to be able to print it out and keep it in your workshop, whatever, go to glennwatt.com and look that up. So I think that's all we've got for you today. Again, that's about all we've got for you. So happy building. And signing off here at CB Gig.